the depth of God's love will also be revealed to them. In other words, the commandment to love one another rises out of the oldest known laws of God to humanity. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor. As it is restated and demonstrated in Jesus Christ. And he or she love what is the brother. That is the supreme test, you know. Huh? I him earlier. And all she came for his baptism. Then we were trying to get you from one day, but you couldn't get me because the phone crashed. Nice. Eh? So what happened? That is what you want. Well, you're not going to get it here today. But I know a church. So she leave and gone. Why you baptize somebody? The first one leave the community today and we not see her. Love for one another is more important than baptism. You are no Christian. Akeem is not a Christian because he worships the My Christianity is not a genuine Christian because I'm the pastor. The genuineness about my Christianity must stop and chat one another and love one another. And when they do it, we must pray for them. So you are going to grow as Christians. That Christian, your love for one another. And only when you are in one another. In this chapter already. With the love of the Lord, I just love you with the love of the Lord. Oh, I can see in you the glory. Can't fulfill the law if you don't love one another. To understand this concept, the Old Testament Jew and his or her neighbor, laws about the tabernacle and the sacrifices. But Paul said that for the New Testament Christian, one commandment takes care of all the regulations. Because when you learn to and we tell life of one another, and we don't defend one another. Well, Paul is saying, so the moral law of God still stands. The righteousness of God's law is still required. However, we do not obey the law for external fear. You know what external fear is? You know that down by 6 miles the police down there. And as a return, you say, start slow down. Huh? You're going to obey the law. Tell me so. I'm going to love it because the law is written in my heart. So if any man in Christ, it says it's a new creation. All things are passed away and it must be evident in your daily walk with God. And so it is not does not really take care of it all. Love helps us to fulfill the law. Love is the motivating factor for obedience. So we have to learn to what? It is a commandment for us to do what? Love one another. So we are commanded to love one another. But the second thing we want to learn, I want to see from this, is to look at the demonstration of Christ's new commandment to love one another. Look at it again in verse 34. It says, a new commandment I give to you, love one another. Then look what it says now. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. So Christ's love for his disciples was to be the model in loving one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And remember that this is Jesus. Jesus is, forward command. As we are asked to keep on following his example of love. How are they to model or demonstrate Christ's commandment to love one another? By following Jesus. If I am a follower of Jesus, then the way I am to love is the way that Jesus loved. Huh? How did Jesus love? He loved his disciples selflessly. If we say he loved them, is that selfishly, it means that he only thinks of himself, right? But if it's selflessly, it means that the love that Jesus had. He didn't think about what he going to get for his birthday, from what he not get. He was thinking about others who people complain they never give me no name. What have you ever given to anybody else? That is the type of love that we must what? Demonstrate. What? As we follow Jesus in his selfless love. In other words, he put others before himself. That is how he taught us to love. But then he loved them what? Sacrificially. And sometimes we think love is meant to give us happiness. But in the long run it does. But it may well bring pain and demand a cross. Just as how Jesus died on a cross because of love for us. And so the disciples must learn that the Christian way is not the easy way. Huh? So if you think that's the easy way, the least problem come for you, run down. In order to bring redemption to the world and glory to God, Jesus must bear a cross. Soon the disciples will see Jesus dying on the cross. And they then will remember that there is no crown without a cross. So in Jesus, God glorifies himself in the cross. And guess what? Just as though Jesus died sacrificially. In other words, he died on the cross. And the songwriter puts it this way. He died that we might be forgiven. He died to make us good, that we may go at last to heaven, saved by his precious blood. That is what Jesus, all Jesus loved. He gave his life for us, sacrificially. And because he gave his life for us sacrificially, if we are going to love, we must also learn to love sacrificially. So, in loving sacrificially, we are going to reach out to others, see? And we're not going to tell people, say, well, you stay. and we begin to pinch ourselves and say, oh, come and do that, man. Why? Look at me, God. Huh? So guess what? We have to learn to and disgrace them. But loving, understanding me that we're going to pray for them, we're going to encourage them to press along, saints, press along in God's own way. Persecution, we must bear trial and crosses. But the heart of the battle is sweeter than the victory. And guess what? Jesus loved them what? Forgivingly. Their leader later denied their leader later denied him. That is Peter. They later forsook him in the hour of need. They were blind and insensitive, slow to learn, lacking in understanding. But there was no failure in them that he could not forgive. And yet still we as Christians find it so hard to forgive one another. Eh? You know, many people leave Riverton Meadows Baptist Church because somebody did them something and they will never forgive them. And any church you're going to find that same way. It's a serious problem when we can learn to forgive, you know. Suppose Jesus was to treat us that way. You know that not one of us would enter into heaven. Because we feel him so often. Sometimes we don't know. We're disappointed. So, like Jesus, we have to set that example. So, we have to, it is a commandment. We have a commandment. We have a model. The same way Jesus loved is the same way we are to love. And finally, the primary purpose for Christ's new commandment is evident in verse 35. A new commandment I give you, love one another. And go to verse 35. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. In other words, the world is good. Everybody in Riverton are going to say you're a Christian. Not because you say you're a member of Riverton Meadows Baptist Church. But because of your love. This love was to be the means whereby the apostles could communicate to all men and women. The means whereby the apostles could communicate to all. The one whom they were emulating in their relationships. So Jesus Christ had an ultimate purpose in mind when he gave his disciples a new commandment, telling them to love one another as he had loved them. That purpose was to reveal to all humankind who he really was and is. Though he had walked among men, demonstrating his love for them and telling them of his reason for coming into the world, to save them from their sins, he would soon no longer be with them in all men will know that you are my disciples, he said, if you love one another. The most important word. We can say we are followers, but are you really his disciple? Are you truly his follower? Let me tell you something. Or others might they call it what they call an alias name. Well, you know the and ask tells us when they look and see how many people are doing exactly what Jesus was doing, they said, these men are men of God. Look, they look on them. And same thing Jesus used to never do. And that how you and I are going to win the world for Christ. They must see Jesus in you. Huh? I must see Jesus in you. As the chorus says, love you so free. Huh? help me to love one another as you have loved me. Help me to model this type of love